She said, I need space to think, and went to her ex's house to think. I gave her all the space she wanted, changed the locks. When she came back to talk, there was nothing left to say. I'm 31M. My girlfriend, or I guess now ex, is 29F. We've been together a little over 3 years, living together for the last year and a half. On the surface, things looked stable. Rent paid on time, shared groceries, weekend routines. But underneath that, there was this constant low-grade tension I kept telling myself was normal. She has a sharp way of talking when she's irritated. Not yelling. Worse than that. Sarcastic, dismissive, like she's already decided you're wrong and she's bored waiting for you to catch up. Anytime I brought up something that bothered me, she'd sigh and say I was being intense or needy. Last Tuesday, she came home late, tossed her keys on the counter, and announced, I need space to think. I asked what that meant. She rolled her eyes. Exactly what it sounds like. Space. I can't breathe in this relationship right now. I stayed calm. Asked if she wanted to talk it out. She laughed, actually laughed, and said, talking is why I need space. Then she grabbed a bag from the closet. Not a suitcase. A deliberate overnight bag. That was my first real warning. I asked where she was going. She hesitated for half a second too long and said, I'm staying at Mark's. Mark. Her ex. The one she swore was ancient history. The one I was told not to worry about because nothing ever worked between them. It's not like that, she added quickly, already annoyed. I just need somewhere neutral to think. Neutral. His house. Right. Before I could even respond, she hit me with, don't blow this up. If you trust me, you'll give me the space I'm asking for. She walked out before I could say anything else. The door clicked shut, and the apartment felt too quiet. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, replaying every moment where I'd ignored that tight feeling in my chest. She wanted space. I just didn't think she realized how much space she was about to get. The first night without her was unsettling in a way I didn't expect. Not dramatic. Just empty. Her coffee mug still by the sink. Her hoodie draped over the chair like she'd be back any minute. I kept checking my phone out of habit, even though she hadn't texted. Around midnight, a message finally came through. I'm safe. Don't spiral. I just need time to think. No, I miss you. No, we'll talk soon. Just instructions, like I was a problem she'd temporarily set aside. I replied with a simple, okay. That was it. No questions. No pushback. I decided if she wanted space, I wasn't going to beg for scraps of reassurance. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Too much quiet will do that to you. I made coffee and sat at the table, staring at the wall where we'd talked about hanging photos someday. I started replaying things I'd brushed off for years. How she'd roll her eyes when I talked about my job. How every argument somehow ended with me apologizing. How Mark's name still came up just often enough to stay relevant. By noon, curiosity got the better of me. I checked her location. She'd shared it for safety months ago and never turned it off. There it was. Mark's house. Still, I told myself not to jump to conclusions. She said she needed space. Thinking takes time. But then my phone buzzed again. A photo notification. One of her friends had posted a story. Wine glasses clinking. A familiar couch in the background. Mark's couch. The caption read, sometimes you just need the right people to clear your head. My chest tightened, but not in a panicky way. More like something settling into place. A puzzle piece clicking in whether I liked it or not. I didn't text her. Didn't confront her. I just sat there, staring at the screen, and realized something uncomfortable but very clear. She wasn't thinking. She was testing how much she could get away with. And for the first time in a long while, I stopped worrying about how she'd feel and started thinking about what I was willing to tolerate. That was the moment I opened my laptop and started checking the lease. The lease was in both our names. That used to make me feel secure. That morning, it just felt informative. I read every line slowly, like it might say something different if I gave it enough attention. Month to month after the first year. 60 days notice. No clause about needing space. No clause about disappearing to your ex's house to think. By late afternoon, she still hadn't come home. No update. No timeline. Just silence. I went to the gym, more out of habit than motivation. Halfway through a set, my phone buzzed. Her name. Can you not be weird about this? I'm already stressed. That was it. Not, how are you holding up? Not, thank you for understanding. Just annoyance that I existed loudly in her peripheral vision. I replied, I'm not being weird. You asked for space. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, You know this is why I needed space. I actually laughed out loud at that. A couple people looked over. I didn't care. When I got home, the apartment felt different. Less like ours. More like a storage unit full of shared habits. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. How every piece of furniture was something she'd picked. How my stuff had been slowly relegated to corners and drawers. Around 9 p.m., curiosity crept back in. Against my better judgment, I checked her location again. Still at Mark's. And then, like a punchline delivered too late, she texted. I might stay another night. I'm not ready to talk yet. No question mark. No consideration that this was also my life she'd put on pause. I sat down on the couch and imagined her there. Imagined her explaining to Mark how confused she was. Imagined him nodding along, offering understanding, maybe comfort. All while I was expected to wait quietly like a well-trained inconvenience. Something hardened in my chest. She asked for space. She didn't ask me to stand still. That night, I made a decision. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. If she was going to figure out whether she wanted a life without me, I was going to help her experience exactly what that felt like. I didn't sleep much. Not because I was anxious, but because my brain wouldn't shut off. Once a thought finally breaks through denial, it doesn't politely wait its turn. By morning, I wasn't angry. I was methodical. I took inventory. Not of her stuff, of mine. What I paid for. What was in my name. Internet, utilities, the couch, the TV, the bed frame she loved, but never chipped in for. Funny how I'd never kept score before. Funny how clear everything becomes when someone leaves you behind without actually breaking up. Around 10 a.m., she texted again. How are you holding up? It almost felt insulting. Like she was checking on a pet she'd left with extra food. I'm fine, I replied. That seemed to irritate her. You don't sound fine. I didn't respond. I was already on the phone with the leasing office, asking very neutral questions. Hypothetical ones. They were polite. Efficient. No judgment. Just facts. After that, I made another call. Then another. By early afternoon, she finally called me. Her voice was softer now, cautious. Hey, I think we should talk later tonight. I asked where she was. There was a pause. Still at Mark's. Of course. I just need to say a few things, she continued. I don't like how cold you're being. Cold. That word again. Funny how calm always feels like cruelty to someone who expects chaos. I'm giving you what you asked for, I said. Space. She exhaled sharply. You're doing this on purpose. Yes, I said. I am. She went quiet. Then defensive. You're acting like I cheated. I'm acting like you left, I replied. Another pause. I'll come by tomorrow, she said. We'll talk. Tomorrow. On her schedule. Like everything else. After the call ended, I stood in the middle of the apartment and looked around. For the first time, I didn't see memories. I saw logistics. She wanted space to think. I decided I wasn't going to be here waiting when she came back with an answer I already knew. That afternoon, I confirmed an appointment. For the locks. Tomorrow morning. The locksmith showed up at 9:12 a.m., sharp. Middle-aged guy, polite, didn't ask questions. Just nodded while I explained what I needed. I stood off to the side as he worked, listening to the sounds of metal and clicks that felt louder than they should have. With every turn of the screwdriver, something in me relaxed. By 9:47, it was done. New locks. New keys. Clean slate. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled. I spent the next hour boxing up her things. Not aggressively. Not carelessly. Clothes folded. Shoes paired. Toiletries sealed. I lined everything up neatly by the door like she was checking out of a hotel she'd already emotionally left. Around noon, my phone rang. Her name. I let it ring. Then a text. I'm on my way over. We need to talk face to face. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Need is a strong word, especially coming from someone who'd vanished without discussion. I replied with one sentence. I gave you space. I'm still doing that. 10 minutes later, I got another text. Longer. Sharper. You don't get to shut me out. This is my home too. You're being petty and dramatic. Petty. Dramatic. The usual vocabulary when she wasn't in control. At 12:38, there was a knock at the door. Firm. Confident. Like she expected it to open. I didn't move. Another knock. Louder this time. Then her voice, muffled through the door. Open it. This isn't funny. I stayed where I was, sitting on the couch, hands steady, heart calm in a way that surprised me. She tried the handle. Once. Twice. Silence. Then disbelief. Did you change the locks? I finally stood up and walked to the door, stopping just short of opening it. Yes, I said through the wood. You asked for space. Her tone shifted immediately, sharp with anger. Are you serious right now? I went to think, not to move out. You left, I said. And you stayed gone. This is insane, she snapped. Open the door so we can talk like adults. I leaned my forehead lightly against the door. There's nothing left to talk about, I said. And for the first time since she walked out with that overnight bag, I meant it completely. She didn't leave right away. For a few seconds after I said there was nothing left to talk about, I could hear her breathing on the other side of the door. Then came the pacing. Back and forth in the hallway. The sharp tap of her heel against the floor. You're overreacting, she said finally, her voice forced into calm. I didn't do anything wrong. I stayed quiet. That silence thing you do, she continued. It's manipulative. You know that, right? I almost smiled. Silence only feels manipulative when the other person loses their leverage. You can't just erase me, she snapped. We've been together 3 years. I didn't erase you, I said evenly. You walked out. That was temporary, she shot back. Normal couples take space. Normal couples don't take it at their ex's house. That hit a nerve. Nothing happened, she said quickly. Too quickly. God, you're so insecure. This is exactly why I needed time away from you. There it was. The rewrite. The version where her choices were my fault. I leaned back against the wall and closed my eyes. I could picture her perfectly, arms crossed, jaw tight, already rehearsing how she'd explain this to her friends later. You really changed the locks, she said, disbelief creeping in. You didn't even ask me. I laughed softly. You didn't ask before you left. Silence again, heavier this time. Then her voice dropped. So what, that's it? You're throwing everything away because I needed space to think? No, I said. I'm ending something that already ended. You just hadn't said it out loud yet. She exhaled sharply. You're being cruel. No, I said. I'm being done. Another pause. Then the sound of her scoffing. Fine. I'll grab my things later. When you calm down. I stepped closer to the door. Your things are boxed. I'll coordinate a time. Not today. That broke the last bit of composure she had left. You don't get to control this, she snapped. You're not that important. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't argue. I was important enough to keep around while you figured out your options, I said. I'm just not doing that anymore. After that, there was nothing. Just the sound of her footsteps retreating down the hallway. I waited until I heard the building door close before I finally unlocked my jaw and exhaled. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. The backlash didn't take long. By that evening, my phone started lighting up with unknown numbers. I ignored them at first. Then the texts started coming in from people I hadn't spoken to in months. What's going on with you and her? She says you locked her out? Dude, that's messed up. I didn't respond to any of them. I already knew the version of the story she was telling. The one where she was taking healthy space, and I lost it. Around 8 p.m., she emailed me. Not a text. An email. Long structured. Like she was trying to sound reasonable for the imaginary audience she assumed would eventually read it. She said she felt emotionally unsafe. She said I'd ambushed her. She said changing the locks was borderline abusive behavior. I read it once. Then again. Slowly. What stood out wasn't the accusations. It was what she never addressed. Not once did she explain why space to think meant staying at her ex's house. Not once did she acknowledge how that choice might feel to me. At the end of the email, she wrote, I'll come by tomorrow to get my things. I expect you to be civil. I replied with 2 sentences. Your things are packed. I'll leave them with the building manager. Please don't come by unannounced again. Her response was immediate. Unbelievable. You've really changed. I stared at that line longer than I should have. Because she was right, but not in the way she meant. I had changed. I stopped explaining myself to someone who'd already decided I was the villain. I stopped trying to prove I was reasonable, while swallowing behavior I'd never tolerate from anyone else. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. No checking my phone. No rehearsing conversations. No wondering where she was or who she was with. Just quiet. And the certainty that even if everyone else believed her version of events, I could live with mine. Because I finally stopped negotiating my self-respect just to keep someone from leaving. She'd already left. I just made it official. I thought things would quiet down after that. I was wrong. 2 days later, I got a message from Mark. Yeah, that Mark. I stared at his name on my screen longer than I'd like to admit. We'd never spoken directly before. He was always just this abstract figure she insisted was harmless. Seeing his name suddenly made everything feel uncomfortably concrete. Hey man, The message started. I think things got misunderstood. She was just here to talk. Nothing happened. You didn't have to go nuclear. Go nuclear. Like changing the locks was somehow more extreme than inviting yourself into someone else's relationship under the guise of thinking. I didn't respond right away. I put my phone down and went for a walk. It was one of those evenings where the air feels heavy, like it might rain, but hasn't decided yet. I realized my jaw was clenched, my shoulders tight. Not anger. Disbelief. When I got back, there was another message from him. She's pretty upset. Says you won't even talk to her. Maybe you should hear her out. That one actually made me laugh. Out loud. In my empty living room. I typed a reply, then deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. Finally, I sent one sentence. She asked for space. I respected that. No response after that. Later that night, I noticed she'd removed me from her social media bios. 3 years together, wiped clean in under 48 hours. Photos still up though. Carefully curated. Nothing messy. Nothing that suggested uncertainty or overlap. It struck me then how important appearances were to her. How this was probably less about losing me and more about losing control of the narrative. The next morning, the building manager texted me to confirm she'd picked up her boxes. No issues. No scene. I pictured her loading them into her car. I wondered if she'd expected me to be there. To look sad. To give her one last chance to explain herself. I wasn't. That afternoon, I packed the last of my things out of the spare room and turned it into an office. Changed the layout. Opened the windows. Let the apartment feel like mine again. For the first time since she left to think, I wasn't wondering what she'd decided. I already had. About a week later, the dust mostly settled. No more emails. No more texts from friends pretending to be neutral. The story had already hardened into whatever version people were most comfortable believing. I got used to the new routine faster than I expected. Coming home to quiet. Cooking what I wanted without commentary. Sleeping diagonally across the bed. Little things that felt oddly luxurious after years of being subtly corrected. Then, on a random Thursday evening, I ran into her. I was leaving a corner store with a bag of groceries when I heard my name. I turned, and there she was, standing on the sidewalk like she'd rehearsed this moment. Hair done, makeup perfect, that familiar expression halfway between confidence and accusation. Wow, she said, looking me over. You look fine. Thanks, I replied. There was an awkward pause. She shifted her weight, clearly waiting for something. An apology, maybe. Or at least discomfort. So, she said, folding her arms. I heard you've been telling people I cheated. I haven't told anyone anything, I said calmly. She scoffed. Please. Everyone knows I just needed space. You didn't have to humiliate me. I almost corrected her. Almost explained. Then I stopped myself. You went to your ex's house to think, I said. People can draw their own conclusions. Her jaw tightened. Nothing happened. Then you should be able to live with how it looks. That landed harder than I expected. Her eyes flashed, and for a split second, the composure cracked. You could have waited, she said quietly. We could have talked. I shook my head. You already left. I just didn't pretend you were still here. She stared at me for a long moment, then said the line that told me everything. I didn't think you'd actually do it. I nodded. I know. There was nothing else to say after that. I walked past her, groceries in hand, heart steady. Behind me, she didn't follow. Didn't call my name. Didn't ask me to stop. For the first time, I wasn't the one being left behind. I was the one walking away. It's been a few weeks now. Long enough for things to stop feeling raw and start feeling clear. I've replayed that moment. Her standing in the doorway, overnight bag in hand, telling me she needed space. More times than I want to admit. Not because I regret what I did, but because I finally understand it. When she said she needed space, she wasn't asking for time alone. She was asking for permission. Permission to step outside the relationship without consequences. Permission to keep me on standby while she sorted out her options somewhere that felt familiar and flattering. And for a long time, I probably would have given it to her. That's the part that's hardest to swallow. Changing the locks wasn't about punishing her. It wasn't revenge. It was the first boundary I'd ever enforced without immediately apologizing for it. The first time I chose certainty over waiting, self-respect over reassurance. Some people have told me I was harsh, that relationships are messy, that I should have heard her out. But here's the thing. She already told me everything I needed to know when she chose her ex's house as her thinking space. When she expected me to sit quietly, anxious and grateful, while she decided whether I was still worth coming back to. When she came back to talk, there really was nothing left to say. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally cared enough about myself to stop negotiating my place in someone else's life. She asked for space. I gave her all of it. And in that space, I realized I'm not someone you leave on pause while you figure out what you want. I'm either chosen, or I'm gone. This time, I chose to be gone.